following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Welcome to the System is Down.
Hey there, you despicable low-life downers. Welcome back to The System is Down, your place for all things uncomfortable. On today's episode, I got to have a fun little chat with a guy that I've been acquainted with for years, but I just recently, thanks to the TSID forum, found out might just be even crazier than I am on the conspiracy side of things. His name is Keaton Johnson. We got to dig into a couple topics, we got off on a few tangents, and just had an all-around great discussion about the state of society today. Our Skype connection cut out just briefly in a few spots, nothing major. It was probably just an internet connection, but I'm going to go ahead and say that it was the CIA tapping into our call. So watch out for that, but they cannot stop this episode from going out. So without further ado, let's get weird. My guest today is an old friend, kind of friend of friends. We haven't really chatted too in depth all that much, but I've known him distantly for, I don't know, how long, Keaton? How long have we known each other?
Oh, well, I remember being 15 and 16 years old and seeing the Dawn Retreat play in Rock Falls, Illinois. So it's been a long time since I've known of you, at least.
I was going to ask, is that where we first met? Was it through, like, band stuff? The Dawn Retreat is my old band that used to play. Well, we still do play. Won't write us off too hard. But was that the first time we met? And where was that at? I have a terrible memory, so I don't remember.
I believe so. I lived in Sterling, Illinois, through that period in my life, and there's a place in Rock Falls, Illinois, the town right next to it, gotcha. Called Crossroads, and they always had bands play. So
yeah, we used to play there all the time. So I am sure that is the place.
Yeah.
And we did run into each other like a couple years ago after I moved back from Ohio, and I vaguely recognized you. You were working in the mall, and you recognized me. Small world, just happened to run into each other again. And now, because of this whole System is Down forum, I come to find out that you are just as much, if not more, crazy than I am into the conspiracy stuff.
Absolutely. And I've been interested in that kind of stuff for a couple of years, and that's actually a funny story how I even got into it. So that's pretty interesting. But
yeah, well, let's start there. Like, What first got you into, like, the conspiracy stuff, the alternative thinking and counterculture type, digging into that? Like, what really sparked your interest in that to begin with?
Funny story. The first time, there was actually two separate occasions that happened, kind of spaced out apart before I started digging in deeper. But, it had to have been 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. I was listening to music with one of my friends, and he showed me a song by a hip-hop artist named Vinny Paz. I don't know if you've ever heard of Vinny Paz.
I have not.
He was a part of Jedi Mind Tricks, which was a hip-hop group from the 90s.
Okay.
He has a song called End of Days. And in that song, it's a great song. I can send you a link to it, too. It talks about a whole bunch of conspiracy theory stuff just all thrown together. And at one point, he mentioned Bohemian Grove. And I had never heard of Bohemian Grove. I didn't know what that was.
Yep.
So I Googled it, just basic Google, like most people do when they look into stuff. And I kind of figured out, what Bohemian Grove was, then I found conspiracy theories about what Bohemian Grove was. And
then you spent an entire week on YouTube, right?
Yeah, no kidding. And then I kind of put it away and didn't worry about it. I was working I had a job where I was helping people and recovering from drugs and alcohol. It's called the 180 Zone, and I was doing that, so I didn't have time to devote a lot of time to that.
Sure.
But a couple years later, by chance, I was on YouTube again, and I found this super interesting 9/11 documentary, which seems to be like a kind of a cliche entering into conspiracy theories, the 9/11s.
It's typically kind of the kickoff for sparking interest, which it kind of gets, it kind of becomes, like you said, a cliche, and it's kind of like scoffed at now, because I don't know if it's because people are like, obviously that didn't happen, or they're like, yeah, we've heard this so many times that we can't possibly take it seriously, which is appalling to me that
right.
Something as terrible as that as the conspiracy theories around that being even semi-true, if that makes you not interested, then there's no hope for you to go anywhere in the conspiracy theories seeking out evidence of things.
And that's the thing that blew my mind, because I had always heard, like the Bush did 9/11 jokes and the jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams type stuff,
right.
And so I had always blown it off. But when they started talking about some of the evidence that was found about World Trade Center Tower, I think it was Tower 7.
Tower 7.
I don't know, the one that was like a football. It was like a football field away, and they announced it was going to fall like 2 hours before it actually fell.
Yep.
And there's news footage of this girl saying that Tower 7 fell,
and you can see it in the
Tower
background.
7 in the background.
Yep.
I was like, and there was even British media who announced that it had fallen, because they were watching it too. And there's British news people saying that it fell way before it fell. And so that stuff was super interesting. And then they found what was it, the micro I forget what it's called. It's been so long since I've looked into it, but the weaponized substance that like can melt steel, that they use to melt steel, and it's weaponized. It's not something that forms naturally.
Right.
It's something that actually the Bushes are involved in, and that's a whole other rabbit trail from there. But it blew my mind. So then I started looking into that. Started looking in, of course, if you come to the conclusion that it was an inside job, or that what we're being told isn't what really happened, you have to come up with why.
Right, yeah. At the very least, if you look into it at all, if you can really argue that it is exactly what we were told, then please let me know, because that is like the the basic, even if you don't think it was a huge conspiracy plot.
Right.
What we're told is not correct.
Yeah. Even if you come to the conclusion, looking at the evidence, that we're told something that wasn't true, then you have to figure out, this is what opened up the door for me when I sat down and thought, well, why would they do that? Why would someone do this? If it wasn't a terrorist attack, what other reasons is there for someone to do something like this? And that's when it's like, then you start digging into like secret societies. You start digging into times that, maybe even our government and other governments have sabotaged themselves in the past, and what their reasons were for that. And that's when you go down the rabbit trail.
Yes. It's a rabbit maze, I would say. Like, there's so many side things to look into, and so many things just tying back 9/11 into other things, and other things into 9/11, and trying to figure out what in the world is the central issue here. But yeah, you got to start somewhere. So. Right.
Yeah, and then sitting back over the next couple of years, even after 9/11, and seeing what's turned as false flag attacks. I know like Sandy Hook is like the one that everyone jumps to, which is widely speculated as a false flag attack. Then it becomes kind of like, oh, well, there's another one. And then you see these horrendous things happening, and you automatically jump into, well, could this be a false flag attack? Could this be something that didn't really happen, that we're being told happened?
Right, yeah. And it's hard to determine, too, because you've got, once you get into that mindset, every single disaster that happens, you automatically are like questioning and speculating whether or not it's what they're telling us, or if it was a false flag. And I think that it's kind of an issue, because I don't want to diminish actual terrible things that happen in the world. There certainly are them, and they're not right. I mean, they're legitimate, and people's lives are ruined. I mean, people's lives were ruined in 9/11, whether it was a conspiracy or just a terrorist attack, and don't want to diminish that at all, but things need to be looked into and questioned.
Absolutely. Then you see people like the victims of 9/11, their family, and even people that are survivors standing up and saying, listen, questioning the government openly, like, why are you lying about this? And they're being looked at as conspiracy theorists. You know what I mean? They're being looked at as like, well, we're sorry for your loss, but you shouldn't question what we tell you happened.
Right.
Even especially in mainstream news. Still to this day on 9/11, you'll see little peaks in mainstream media, which I don't usually watch the news. I just it's so repetitive. It's always the same thing. It's so redundant. I just don't watch it because I don't feel like I'm learning anything from it. I'm not gaining anything from it. But if you watch like 9/11 specials and stuff, you'll see there's little slivers of like the new news team will talk about 9/11 family members for people who've lost their loved ones in 9/11 who still to this day say, 9/11 was a lie. There were things about it that weren't right.
Right.
And mainstream media will cover it for like 2 minutes, and then they move on to the next thing. Whether it's a puppy fashion show
or a giraffe giving birth or something to that effect.
Yeah, exactly. And I always think of Anchorman, the movie Anchorman, where it's a gorilla that's giving birth or something. Yep. It's absurd.
Or like a squirrel on water skis or something like that.
Hey, that's quality family entertainment there.
Exactly. Yeah. I try to avoid. Well, I don't even have to try to avoid the mainstream media. I just have no interest in it. I accidentally found myself watching like Fox News or something recently, and the whole thing is like, coming up after the break, we're going to talk about the giraffe giving birth, and then first of all, who gives a crap? And then you watch 5 minutes of commercials, and they come back and they say, this giraffe is giving birth. Here's a picture. All right, next story. Like their lineup for it is the story in itself, and it's completely worthless.
No kidding. And then they'll talk for like the next hour, and then they repeat it every hour or so. They're like, coming up at 10 o'clock, we'll re-review the giraffe giving birth. My favorite, I found myself working a job a couple years ago where I was helping a really good friend of mine clean out foreclosed houses. He was a very devout listener to Rush Limbaugh. And I found it like, it doesn't matter what mainstream media outlet you listen to. It's always about how bad the other side is, because everything's political now.
Yeah.
Everything is political. Everyone's political side. Like Fox News is what right wing, and CNN is like left wing, but it's fake news now, which is the new coin term.
Yes.
It's fake news now, but they're always just throwing insults.
It's just straight polarizing and fear mongering and keeping everybody pissed off about this or that, and if it's not that, it's some watered down nothing story that nobody cares about, and nothing in between, nothing that is of actual substance.
Right. It's the same agenda that, as I look up more and more about what's happened just in our nation's history since World War II, you know what I mean? The past over 50 years, the same agenda has been pushed, I feel like, in all mainstream outlets since then. It's always, okay, well, first it was, World War II's over, but then the Germans, and then it was Vietnam, and then it was, you know what I mean? Now it's ourselves. We're pointing fingers at ourselves. And now it's North Korea and Russia, though.
Because the election outrage is fading, so it's got to be something.
Right, and even the Russians were involved in the in the election, didn't you hear that?
Yeah, of course.
Oh my gosh! And then they're coining the term fake news for things that doesn't agree with societal norm. Just like back in the day, they weaponized the term conspiracy theorist for people who said, well, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't seem right. The CIA coined the term conspiracy theorist. That's where it comes from. So, and that's just really interesting too. The foundation of that term in itself is kind of raises your eyebrow.
Yeah, I mean the term in itself should, you would assume, if you just heard it without any stigma or anything, the term conspiracy theorist is, somebody who thinks maybe some things that we're told are incorrect, and maybe somebody is conspiring to serve a different agenda than what they're saying. Pretty simple, pretty inarguable, but because it's gotten that stigma, as soon as you say the term conspiracy theorist, you're a nut job and you shouldn't be listened to, and you're completely discredited just based off of what the term has become.
Absolutely, and that goes back to, you and I even had conversation on the forum about media like brainwashing, and they have these buzzwords. They have these phrases that everyone in their brain connects to one thing, but really the definition doesn't mean. Well, like if you look at the word liberal or the word
conservative.
Conservative, exactly. Thank you. Those phrases mean something, but when you hear them now in the mainstream media, they mean something different. Suddenly, conservatism means
the enemy.
absolutely no tolerance for modern stuff. Yeah, and then liberals mean like weepy, crying snowflakes.
Right.
Like they've demonized both sides. It's absolutely absurd.
And so it completely delegitimizes any actual talking points, any actual discussion, because you're limiting these people and their backgrounds, these conclusions that they've come to, you're limiting them to a definition of a group, and the most outrageous, polarized end of that group that is hateful or demeaning. Absolutely. Or has nothing to do with politics, has nothing to do with your beliefs for religion or the political system and where you think the country should go. It's just, you're this and that's all you're going to be. So fight.
Yep, and you're a bastard because you believe in this certain belief. Like they make the claim about this, but there's the whole little known fact that, Abraham Lincoln was a conservative, and the KKK was founded as a liberal movement, and yet that's completely switched around apparently from what it is today, and they claim that there was a paradigm shift, and they completely switched stances. Like, okay, you can tell the same lie 1,000 times and it doesn't get any more true. That it comes down to they're labeling us so that what we're labeled as fights with the opposite label. Right. It's like I said, too, it's been that way even before that, but it's been that way majorly in our country since the end of World War II, since the United Nations was formed. And that's a whole other rabbit maze of conspiracy theory stuff.
My personal endorsement for today is for the Jason Stapleton program. The Jason Stapleton program is a daily live video and audio podcast that covers politics, current events, and economics from a liberty-minded perspective. Jason has created one of the most professional productions in the podcast world today, and his ability to take complex political and economic issues and present them in a level-headed, easy-to-understand manner makes his show a daily essential. I personally try to set aside time every single day to catch the Jason Stapleton program, and when I fall behind, I'm more than willing to double down and catch back up. It's that good. Sure, he strays away from the crazy conspiracy things, but I can let that slide. So check out the Jason Stapleton program on iTunes or visit jasonstapleton.com. Educate yourself.
You look at news nowadays and the way that it's set up, it's comical because it's so much of like a social experiment. Like social experiment 101. If we make two groups of people hate each other enough and see what happens.
Right. It's lab rats.
Yeah, exactly. All the people that do lab rat trials. I was watching just a documentary from one of my favorite YouTube channels, and they have that documentary that I shared on your forum. And they talk about back in, I want to say, the 70s. They had two social experiments going on at the same time. This guy had mice, lab mice, essentially, and he gave them every single thing that they needed. And this was a social experiment to find out if it comes to the point where no one has to work anymore, because all our jobs are done by robotics, which is an argument in itself. But how living beings would react to getting everything provided for them, but not really having a purpose, not having a drive, not having to work. And they did it in two separate ways. They did it with mice, and his results were absolutely appalling and scary. And then they did it again in St. Louis.
What were his results with the mice? Like, what was the outcome of that?
At first, it was fantastic. At first, everyone was provided for. There was no worry. They were just getting kind of fat and relaxed and lazy. But what they found is over time, as the mice started reproducing and younger generations were being raised not having to work for food, not having to do things, not really having a purpose, they stopped reproducing and they disassociated themselves from the older generation. And then the older generation started literally becoming so violent towards each other.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that such? It's so funny that decades ago this experiment happened, and it's almost like we're seeing that happen right in front of us. We're seeing a young generation disassociate themselves, not reproduce. They're skyrocketing numbers of young couples that not only don't want to get married but don't want to have children, which is a push away from the old social norm.
Yeah.
You get married, you settle down, you work a job, you work hard, and then you retire and you relax the last 20 to 30 years of your life. But it's not like that anymore in society. And me as a person, I'm 26. I don't associate myself with millennials. Sure. But I also don't associate myself with like the generation before me. I guess I'd be labeled more of like a Generation Y. Sure. But standing back and seeing, the generation below me, first of all, generations are breaking down so much closer. Like there's generation gaps. Yeah. Where it used to be 50 to 100 years generation gap. Now it feels like almost every 5 to 10 years there's a generation gap. But watching these young generation people disassociate themselves, wanting nothing to do with the way things used to be, and the older generation fighting amongst themselves and fighting with the younger people. And this isn't everyone. This isn't just a black and white thing. Yeah. So please hear me out on that. But it's almost like I'm watching like a car crash about to happen, and there's absolutely nothing I can do about it because the older generation, a lot of them, not all of them, are set in their ways and they don't want to listen to me. And then the younger generation are set in their ways now and they don't want to listen to my generation either. So it's funny that this experiment that happened decades ago with mice, and he retried the experiment again with lab rats, and the same thing happened. The exact same thing happened. I'm watching this experiment happen right in front of me. It only validates more and more some of the stuff that I actually do research and look into. Not saying that I believe everything that I read on the internet, but it's scary how
obvious it is.
Yeah.
It's so feasible that that's the case, and it's so obvious. And the people who are buying into it just thinking, hey, everything is as it always has been, and we've always been this polarized, we've always been this angry at each other. It's commonly accepted as the way things are and the way things always will be, when it's not the case. There's something going on.
Absolutely. And if we look at society, or I guess what history says society was like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, there's always been strife between people. But now we're seeing something almost comical. And I say that not because, it's really genuinely funny, but it's like the things people are so willing to fight one another over seems more minuscule than it's ever been in our recorded history.
Absolutely.
So I have my opinion, but that makes me a communist or a Nazi. That's the phrase that Nazis being coined to the alternative right. They're fascists now. Which is funny, but the liberal left are all socialists.
Yes, the liberal left are socialists. They're calling the right fascist while they try and stop the right from having an opinion, which seems a little contradictory to me. Seems a little bit fascist.
Absolutely.
But, all it takes is one guy on 4chan saying, hey, this means this now. Pepe the Frog is now a racist thing, and everybody blows up, and they're just like, yep, I guess that's the case now. Something else to be pissed off about, and then fight.
Yes, there's that meme, not that, there's that meme that's the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and it says white people are white, that's racist. It cracks me up because it's so perpetuated in the media, which is eyebrow raising too, because anyone with enough common sense can sit back and see where this is perpetuating from. It's coming from the media. It's coming from, Black Lives Matter. Well, all lives matter. Well, both is offensive now, even though, all lives matter shouldn't be. Black Lives Matter shouldn't be. That's where I draw the conclusion that, the media is openly dumbing us down. They're making us so stupid isn't the right word because people are smart. Yeah. They're making us so ignorant by the crap that they're feeding us, that they're making us just blindly hate anyone who opposes what we believe.
Even people who agree with what we believe. If they use the wrong phrasing, then we're just going to freak out and assume that they're the enemy as well.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Assume that other people are on our side and being outraged against them. And it just takes nothing. It's such a delicate balance that we're in. It's like it's falling apart.
No kidding. And it's like Well, the military term, you divide and conquer, has always been like one of the biggest military strategies in our recorded history. And that's what we see unfolding in front of us. That's why I'm so keen and so stern on the idea that, there's something media is making us divide. Yes. So that they can control us. It's not that hard of a leap of the imagination to assume that the government doesn't want us running around with free thinking ideas. They don't want us to be ingenuitive. They don't want us to make something new, because if we do make something new, they're just going to try to buy it from us anyway or take it from us by force. It's crazy to look at how much people are controlled and how easily swayed they are off of internet articles, off of news reports, off of articles in the newspaper with nothing more than anecdotal evidence.
Yeah, just headlines. All it takes is a catchy headline to make somebody freak out without even reading the bullcrap that's actually inside the article.
No kidding. Like, you put on in the news article, potential Russian hackers get involved with the election, and people are like, oh my God, Russia, they're going to kill us. We're going to have to fight Vladimir Putin's the devil, and we're going to have to fight them.
And as far as they know, that article, if you clicked on it and read it, it probably says just kidding inside it, and they use that as enough evidence to be outraged just because there was a news article with a headline that triggered them and flipped their fear button.
And if you look at mainstream either news articles on the internet, in the paper, or on TV, you hear those buzzwords. You hear things like theoretically or potentially, and people just read right through those words. They don't see Russia theoretically has enough nuclear arms to start World War III, but then they want to use conspiracy theorists as an insult phrase. It's so funny.
Well, on the topic of you were talking about like technology taking people's jobs and the whole rat experiment and stuff like that, where people don't have to work. I'm not entirely sure where I land on the idea of, jobs being taken by robots and stuff like that. I think that it certainly has the potential to dumb us down, make us lazy, that type of thing, make us have lesser value as humans. However, I also think that the fear that is encased in the whole talk of, hey, people are losing their jobs because of robots at McDonald's and stuff like that, I think that could be problematic in itself, because that is basically saying that ingenuity is wrong and humans couldn't possibly thrive in a world where robots do some of the dumb work, the grunt work, that people don't have the ability to think and create new ideas that give them the value. I mean, somebody's got to be making this technology. Somebody's got to be working on these robots and stuff like that. I mean, do you think that it is a technological world to be afraid of, or that we should embrace technology and grow alongside it and increase our own personal value in a technological world?
See, and I think to that I have a two-sided answer, because I see the pros and cons to both sides of it. You see in movies like Terminator and The Matrix and stuff like that, like technology becomes so advanced that it takes us over and they kill us all. I don't know if I 100% prescribe to that idea, but it surely is possible. I like to have an open mind about things, and that's something I'm more, you're always aware of, but I'm more just looking into this whole thing. But you have that's in the news headlines also. Pretty soon, people who are taking your order at McDonald's won't even have a job. You know what I mean? Because they'll be replaced with robots, because it's easier. They don't have to pay them. 1% gets richer, and there's propaganda and anti-propaganda thrown all over the place at it. But I also think technology is vital. I think technology is not evil inherently or good inherently, but I sure know that people who like power and like control, what they would like to do with this technology, because when you look at one of my favorite works of, quote unquote fiction is 1984. And the idea that, technology is being used, it's not the one doing the controlling, but it's being used to control people, and you see stuff like that like that all the time with like Pokemon Go and augmented reality and virtual reality.
And Facebook.
And Facebook, how many goodness, and the news isn't even shying away from how many hours people spend on Facebook.
Right.
You know what I mean? They'll talk about it. They'll say, people spend an average of 5 to 15 hours a day on their smartphones, on Facebook and on stuff like that.
Which I would submit is the same as augmented reality. It's letting people have an avatar and be outraged about things without having to have discussions and put their actual face on a discussion that they're having. And that goes toward the divide, and it goes toward dumbing people down and just allowing people to be outraged without a real opinion on anything.
Well, and it allows people a platform to say things that they would never say to a person in person. So then people start not knowing how to talk to people in real life. And then people don't have the social skills to obtain a job. So then companies have to look for alternatives for a job. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy of like, will robots take over our jobs? Well, robots are making us, potentially dumbing us down or making us ignorant enough to not be able to get certain jobs because we don't know how to handle people. There are some people who want to play, and I have an Xbox One and I play video games. So I'm 26 years old. I'm not ashamed.
Sure.
But there are some people who spend days and days and days and days and days playing video games. But this has been around for longer than Facebook has. And so it's like it all platforms off of each other. There was like TV programs, they're programming. It's funny that they're called that, but there are things on TV. I mean, back in the day, my parents always told me when they were young, they only had like 3 or 4 channels, so they were limited in what kind of information they could gather through television. And so now we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of channels, and there's still nothing interesting on. I feel like it's still the same thing as if we had 3 channels. We're very limited in the information that's put out there.
We should have more to distract us and gain our attention, even if it's not any better. There's just more of it now. Like, it's everywhere.
Exactly.
It's in your pocket. It's on your TV, on your computer. It's everywhere. So it's so impossible to avoid now.
Absolutely. Well, and it's made people addicted to information, but just because they're addicted to information doesn't mean that it's valuable information. Doesn't mean that it's worth anything, or it's going to help us, or it's going to improve us. It's just we have this thing in our pocket, and anytime we ever have a question, we can just pull it out. So we don't have to interact with other people to gain their information because it's all on Facebook. You can go and see what your friend Dave, that he went to McDonald's and they messed up his order. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can see that because he complains about it on Facebook. So that's the type of information that we're putting in our bodies. And then there's articles about 17 different ways to please your significant other, and people are reading that. You know what I mean? There's like, I'm a huge comic book nerd, but I can watch just about every spoiler, every Easter egg, every review of every comic book movie that's ever come out in the last 20 years. You know what I mean? I can look at that information. Am I really gaining anything? No, because I haven't watched these movies. I haven't experienced it. I haven't talked to other people about their theories. Facebook in itself can be used for a good thing. I look at just the forum you just started. I mean, you just started it not a couple days ago, and it's already become one of my favorite things to just open up and scroll. Like, I'll just go onto the forum and I'll just scroll what people's opinions are, what people think.
Yeah, I it's kind of a catch-22 because I hate the fact that I have to make that forum within the belly of the beast of Facebook. I'm kind of contributing to the problem because I'm pulling people back into Facebook. But if we can actually use Facebook as a tool to have real discussions about real topics, real uncomfortable situations, and real life, I mean, for me personally, I have been on Facebook quite a bit since I started it, but I don't feel stupid when I leave Facebook because I'm actually using it to interact with people like yourself and old friends that I haven't actually talked to on a real level, and find out, where people that I haven't really conversed with a lot in my life, where they stand on politics, religion, conspiracies, and just real topics and stuff like that. So
Absolutely.
it sucks that I have to do it there, but I doubt I would have been able to get 100 people into my website to have this discussion. So I guess we can use it against itself.
Yeah, and it becomes a potential for like a Trojan horse. You know what I mean? We can come together and figure out how to overcome these issues that we all agree are so big, like media brainwashing, like secret society stuff, and we were talking about like even like religious stuff. Just because everyone on that site doesn't believe in the same religious aspects doesn't mean we can't have good conversations about it, instead of jumping in with what the media says we have to do, and that's hate people who don't agree with us.
The religious thing is the same as the political discussion. Like you've got Christians, Muslims, Jews. Can I say Jews? I don't know if that's offensive still or not. But
I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, you've got different religions and stuff, and like I said in episode 1, I would probably closest relate to the ideas of Christianity, but I have so many Christian friends who I absolutely hate their ideology and how they treat people and everything. And I've talked to Christians that I genuinely believe are some of the biggest douchebags in the world. And it's the same as with politics, where you've got these labels, and until you can actually have these open discussions about where you actually land on that spectrum, it's just going to keep being polarized and labeled name calling and making assumptions about people's beliefs and that type of thing.
I absolutely agree with you. And when it comes to religious standings too, I mean, it's so weird now, because like I guess, like you said, I mostly relate to like a Christian, but I know some Christians that are some of the most judgmental, anti-Christ people I've ever met in my life, that don't show any resemblance of this man named Jesus that's in the Bible. They're really quick to point fingers. I know some Christians that are so about like killing Muslims and killing people because they're bad. There's one guy who
why do they think the Muslims are bad? Is it because they're killing people?
Yeah, that's the craziest part. It's that they're so bad because Muslims are killing Christians that they want to go kill Muslims. It seems kind of to show them how bad killing is. It's kind of funny. But I used to live with this guy, and I won't use names, but I used to live with this guy, and he was so like, I don't know how to explain it, and I don't want to come off as like judgy, because I mean, I'm not any better than anyone else. But this guy was so like almost military mindset. But he hated Barack Obama so much that he said he should be dragged into the street and hung for the whole United States to see. And I thought for a second, I was like, wait, didn't Jesus Christ get hung on a cross in front of all of Jerusalem to get seen because of his beliefs? Not that I'm saying Obama resembles Jesus in any way, but it's like, that's kind of pharisaical. I don't know if that's a word, but I just made it up. That's kind of pharisaical.
Good. It's a combination of Pharisees and parasites, so I think it works.
I like that. I'm going to use that in the future. But it's like this goes to, I think, for almost any religious belief. And I'm very, very I'm very weird, because I believe in what the Bible says like perfectly. That's just my personal opinion, and I think American Christianity doesn't believe that.
Sure.
A lot of American Christianity just believes in American Christianity. They don't believe in it really in Jesus, other than they coin his name when they pray and stuff like that. But they're more of almost like churches in America has almost become a political power. I mean, it's withering slowly, because I think anything founded on something that isn't sturdy is going to fall anyway. You know, and that's why I think we're seeing a decline in like churchianity, as I call it, people that just get together and do church things because they're church people who love and live church. Right. I don't think it's wrong to have a church. I don't think it's wrong to meet together as people and talk about our views and opinions and talk about that kind of stuff. But it's so far from what I think it was intended to be.
Sure.
And I think a lot of that has to do with our previous discussion about media and brainwashing and stuff like that. And we have people like the Heaven's Gate people and like the people who claim to be for good stuff, and then they make people kill themselves, and that gives that gives people, the Church of the Lamb of God and stuff like that. Like it gives that kind of stuff bad names. But
a little bit.
I'm very critical about Christianity, and I feel that I don't want to say entitled because that's a trigger word, but I feel like I can be critical of Christians because that's what I consider myself. I consider myself a person who loves Jesus, but
Sure.
That's what I consider myself. But this goes for any religion. I'm sure. I mean, we've seen throughout history religious groups who are radicals do things that don't really line up with what they say their beliefs are. I mean, the biggest thing that's kind of fading in and out, they just want to remind us every time they pop up, is ISIS, the Islamic State of Iran and Syria. They use these people as like, look at what these Muslims are doing, but this is what ISIS is doing, not what Muslims are doing. It's hilarious. I mean, it's not hilarious. It's terrible.
It's hilariously horrifying.
Absolutely.
I say this a lot on the political discussion, and I would submit the same toward religious discussion. I mean, if you're looking at, let's for example, left versus right. As right-wingers, we're told, not that I am, but as right-wingers, you're told that that the left is bad because of this, this, and this, and you're convinced that they are your enemy, and nobody takes into account the fact that these are people that we're talking about. They're people who had a different upbringing, were raised in a different society, a different social norm,
100%.
a different, they've had different experiences in their lives, and they came to different conclusions. The leftists are not people who want to destroy America because they disagree with you. And if you're a leftist, guess what? The right-wingers aren't people who want to destroy America just because they agree with you. They came to different conclusions, and they want what they think is best for America, and it disagrees with you. The same with like religions and stuff like that. Christians in America are kind of under the assumption that Muslims just want to blow up the world and they just want chaos. They were raised in a society where what they were taught is something that I disagree with, and I think that they have all good intentions. Like they have come to the conclusion that they are doing the right thing, and it is something that we disagree with, so we just automatically say they're the enemy. And like with religious stuff, it gets more hairy because then you get into actual violence. But it's like the media is so polarizing that right-wingers are convinced that leftists do not have the country's best interest in mind. They are trying to destroy everything, and the same vice versa. Right. It's just so manipulated.
It makes it sound like everyone that it doesn't agree with what we agree with is like a James Bond villain. Like they're in their secret lair, like scheming on how to destroy us. But that's not what they're doing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's part of the brainwashing too. I mean, and then we completely don't look at the elephant in the room. We don't look at stuff like, and I'm going to be very, very just forward with this. We don't look at like these secret societies who are doing mock, quote unquote, or unmock sacrifices in wide open that are recorded, that are dated, that are verified at meetings like Bohemian Grove and like the CERN thing. And I could talk for another 3 hours on CERN and how I absolutely just am appalled at some of the stuff that you can look on their website and see. And I'm appalled by that. And then there are secret societies. There are the theories, quote unquote, that the Jews that are in Israel aren't really Jews anyway. They're fake Jews and what they're doing. And then the Vatican. I don't want to step on too many Catholic toes because I know some very amazing Catholic people. But some of the stuff the Vatican's doing or has done, continues to do, is absolutely absurd. But we want to point fingers. We want to point fingers at the Lutheran Church and the Methodist Church that are down the road and how terrible they are. Right. We want to look at people in our own churches or in our own societies and say, could you believe that guy is living with his girlfriend and they're not married? How terrible. They're such scum.
The biggest conspiracy of all, living with your girlfriend before marriage, right? That's what we have to focus on.
that's what we have to focus on is living with our significant other before marriage, because it's an apostasy. But no, it's like there are people who are openly killing other people, claiming, I'm not convinced that all these people, all these Muslims in other countries that are killing Christians are Muslims. I'm not convinced. But I like to think, I'm only 26, so I'm not like old, but I'm not a boy anymore. I like to think from what I've experienced with people of all different nationalities. I've seen ignorance and I've seen anger and I've seen stuff like that, but there's a bigger picture. And I think anyone who takes just a second to step back out of our day-to-day bullcrap, our 9-to-5 bullcrap, all of the stuff we're told we're supposed to do. We're supposed to shop at Walmart because it's Walmart. We eat at McDonald's because that's what our kids like. We do this and we do that, and we're so programmed to do these things. If we take a second to step out of it, we go to church because we're supposed to do, not because people love Jesus. People go to temple not because they love God, but because that's what their religion tells them to do. But where's the sincerity? Where's the realness? That's what I strive for. I don't care what religion you are. Show me your compassion. Show me your passion. Show me your realness, because that's what I recognize. I recognize realness. I don't recognize fake people. I don't recognize when people come up to me in the church that I go to and try to kiss my ass in front of the pastor to look good. I don't care. When you ask, like the basic example, what is the first thing everyone asks you when you walk into a church on a Sunday morning? They shake your hand and they say, "How are you doing?"
Yeah.
And that's the biggest. First of all, you're going to lie to them.
Well, what would they do if you started laying into them about how you're doing? I mean, how are you doing today? Well, my marriage is on the rocks, and my wife's cheating on me, and I have a serious drug addiction. Do you really want to go there?
Right. No kidding. But first of all, everyone always lies to the answer, and they say, "I'm good. I'm great." But you get those some people that are like, "How are you really doing?" And I respect that. But most of the time, and I've had opportunities like this before where I just say, "Well, I'm doing this and I'm doing this," and people, and I respect this also because I really, believing what I believe that there's power not only in prayer and positive thinking, but in words that we say. They're like, "Well, let me pray for you," or the cop out is, "Well, I'll pray for you later." I won't do it right now, but I'll do it for you later, just so that God just comes down and fixes all your problems. Yep. And it's so crazy. So like fake people are everywhere. They've integrated themselves into churches. They've integrated themselves into workplaces. They've integrated themselves, especially into government. People who just don't care. People who smile to your face and stab you in the back. It's everywhere. And that's my biggest problem with like what I would call organized religion is the fakeness that people have. It's widespread, but I fully believe, and some might call this like anecdotal evidence, but I truly believe through what I've experienced in my life that I believe what I believe for a reason. That doesn't mean that I know everything. And that's the biggest thing I never want to claim, is that I know everything or that I even know more than anyone else. But I'm a person, just like all of us live in our lives, trying to find what's real and what's not real. And I think that's at the heart of all conspiracy theorists, is figuring out what's real and what's not.
Absolutely. That's well, I mean, we could totally wrap it up there because that's a great cap on it. But yeah, you're talking about just everybody's so fake. We're given outlets to be as fake as we possibly can be. And with Facebook, some comedian, who was it? I think it was Bo Burnham. I listened to him on a podcast recently, and he was talking about how, with Facebook, we look at everybody, quote unquote, around us, and they're all smiling. They're all happy. They've got it all together. And can you imagine what the next generation is dealing with as far as living up to standards? Before we had models that you were expected to live up to those standards, and there was depression because of that. Now you've got your friends from high school who are presenting their life in the most glorious light that they possibly can. And these kids have to be looking at this thinking, I am the only person here who's got this dumpster of a life, and who am I supposed to talk to about that? Like, it's going to be a problem, a social problem very soon. I think that this whole fake persona in religion, politics, Facebook, everything, it's going to start really having a strong impact in the very near future, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And that's, I think, the foundation of everything that I've rambled on about, and everything that you and I have talked about in this entire time all comes down to, we're being shown fake things so we can believe fake things, so we can live a fake life with other fake people, doing fake things together. It's absurd. And when we start to, see a bigger picture of it behind the girls that like to take selfies that make them look perfect, they take behind getting that perfect look, and behind trying to have the nicest car and the nicest stuff. And listen, if someone's listens to this or whatever, and they have a nice job so they can have these nice things, that's cool. But I mean, I think when we start to show off and when we start to warp who we are and when we try to look perfect is when this divide and conquer, this shadow government idea, the media, that's when they've won. That's when we start condescending and looking down on other people. And I think that's one of the biggest threats that we face right now. It's not Russia, it's not North Korea, it's not Muslims.
It's us.
It's ourselves. Yeah, it's ourselves trying to be better than everyone else. There's the nationalism. For a long time, I had a really big problem with nationalism, thinking that America was the best country and blah, blah, blah. Well, everyone who lives in a country, for the most part, thinks they're proud of their country. I can't be upset about that, but it's sometimes I see peaks or little glimmers of, the whole pride thing of like trying to be better than everyone else. Yeah. When we're all just people, living our lives and wherever we're at, and until we can unplug and until we can disconnect from social media, trying to make ourselves look good, trying to get likes and followers, and trying to be funny and be edgy and stuff like this, trying to be the best looking, trying to have the best stuff, trying to portray this false happiness. Yeah. Until we stop pretending, we're going to keep having these same problems that we see in the media all the time. This chaos everywhere. We're going to keep having that because people are going to be insecure. Future generations, like that mouse experiment, the future generations are going to disassociate themselves from other people. They're going to become like hermits. They're not going to want to be around people. They're not going to even want to really be around each other, but they're not going to want to be around people.
Yeah, and from the least conspiratorial crazy level, I mean, there's a problem. There's a problem with where we're going. Yeah. And like, even if you don't subscribe to Bohemian Grove or 9/11 or anything at all, you can look around and see that things are going in a negative direction. And that is not to say live in fear of it. That is to say change it. Talk to somebody, have these conversations, get to know somebody, get to know where their background and their heart, instead of just accepting what you see on Facebook or accepting the label that's been slapped on them. Until we actually have those conversations, it's not going to change, and they're just going to keep perpetuating and living in fear of the future and assuming that everybody's the enemy. Yeah.
And while we could talk, for hours and hours on conspiracy theorists, and trust me,
we absolutely will.
A millennia. But I think this is the foundation of all of it. All conspiracy theorists start with this one thing, with this. There's so much garbage around us. We have to actually look and see what's real, and that's the foundation of all conspiracy theorists. Is I want to find the truth. I don't want to subscribe to what they're telling me, because what they're telling me is hurting me. It's not helping me.
Absolutely. I love it. Well, yeah, man. It was awesome to actually talk to you for real for the first time as a person. Yeah. And I would absolutely love to have you on again. I mean, you've got probably way more back knowledge on some of this stuff than even I do. And I've done way more research into this stuff than is healthy. So it's good to get to talk to you and find somebody who is on par with the craziness, and I would love to do it again for sure.
Absolutely, I would love to do more, and talk about crazier stuff. I mean, this was a pretty normal. This was a pretty normal conspiracy theorist discussion. Yeah. I think we went way too crazy at all.
If this If this pushes anybody away for being too crazy, then they should probably go and unsubscribe right now, because this is the surface of the surface right here.
Absolutely, and I would love to talk about even crazier stuff with you on here and even in person. I definitely will bring works cited and notes and all sorts of things.
Sounds good, man. Well, yeah, it was great talking to you. Thanks for coming, and I'll talk to you later.
Absolutely, later.
Have a good one. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed my discussion with Keaton Johnson. Like I said, I'll probably be having him back on from time to time, as he's just fantastic at digging into things and forming ideas on these theories and trying to tie things together, which I find very refreshing. On next Monday's episode, I have a fun experimental conversation on the topic of drugs, marijuana in particular, and I think you'll really enjoy it. But in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes, like our page on Facebook, and join the Uncomfortable Forum discussion at tsidpod.com/forum. Until next time, question everything and stay uncomfortable. I'll talk to you then. Thanks. This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.